It's going to be any second. It's preparing to live stream.
I'm just grateful that you're the one who does this, because watching you guys do this, I would have never been able to figure that out.
We've stumbled many times.
You do a good job.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
that's a
now-
good point.
Now we're retracting.
Oh, look it now. Okay, you did get it. You're live.
Thank you for telling me that.
You're welcome.
My doctor says the same thing. Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Welcome to the Board of Trustees Spokane Public Library meeting. Do we have any visitors in the room that would like to be acknowledged? Hearing none. And now I will present the Spokane Public Library land acknowledgement. All Spokane Public Library buildings sit on the traditional homelands of the 4 bands of the Spokane Tribe of Indians: Upper Band, Middle Band, Lower Band, and Chewelah Band. Since time immemorial, the Spokane Tribe of Indians has lived and cared for these grounds, identifying themselves as flesh of the earth. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We show gratitude to the land, river, and peoples who have been fishing, hunting, harvesting, and gathering here for generations. May we learn from one another's stories so that we may nurture the relationship of the people of the Spokane Tribe and to all those who share this land. All right. Do we have any changes or additions to the proposed agenda? Hearing none. Approval of the December 2024 board minutes.
I'm going to approve the December 2024 board minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second that.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I have no chairman's report today, so I will turn this over to Andrew.
That was quick. I have submitted written report, a couple of highlights from there. We're currently partnering with Washington State University to get the word out about the Washington LGBTQ+ survey. It's spotlighted on our website. Really, the point is to do a statewide study that gathers information about the lived experience, issues, and needs of the community. Legislative session is in full swing as of last week. So what that means for me is a lot of reading of bills in really bad font and rating them as to the importance of libraries. The library directors meet once a week to review these and decide on whether or not there needs to be advocacy done with our lobbyists on these issues. Also in front of you is the new issue of Highlight City Local, prepared by our awesome communications team. So feel free to take a look at that. We also have interviews scheduled for the upcoming trustee vacancy on January 29th and 31st. We had well over 50 candidates apply. We're narrowing down the interviews down to 13 candidates with focus on District 1. We have not had representation from District 1 in quite some time, and we need to remedy that. As far as our DEI efforts go, I've listed the books that we're focusing on as part of the report. Some great selections. Our first is Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance, and then we'll be going into Word Slut, Blind Spot, Rough Sleepers, The Bluest Eye, Playing in the Dark, and Radical Respect. And we'll also be focusing on probably 1 or 2 documentaries throughout the year as well. Heads up as far as our collections go, the service provider that allowed us to issue museum passes to both the MAC and Mobius no longer is in business. So we're working with a new provider on that and hope to have it back online in the coming weeks. Also, as part of our reduced revenue from the city of Spokane general fund. We've tightened some of our collection. We will be discontinuing access to Hoopla at the end of February. We have had a handful of customers that have been upset by that, but the money is what the money is. The access to that service was really not a great experience for all, because the credits that we would be able to issue, they would expire by 6 o'clock in the morning. So you really need to be a night owl to really access anything from that service. Also leaving our offerings are craft and hobby, which provided video lessons on craft and hobbies. World Book Early Learning is also leaving, underutilized, often too complicated for young students. It took a lot of adult supervision for the usage. And then also leaving is Demographics Now, which was shut down by Gale, the vendor that we used, and the Bloomberg terminal, which just ended up being too costly for us to maintain. Instead, we'll be bringing in Placer AI, and you'll be seeing some of the data that we were able to get from Placer AI just for our own usage hours open to the public tonight from Paris. As far as our staff goes, our star spotlight for December went to Tanya Starkey. She really came through when a bunch of staff members became ill, and we were able to stay open because of her willingness to stay, and really she's a great dedicated employee for us. Re-engaged in my office hours for staff this month. I took December off because of the holidays. And if you're a regular visit to the branches, you might find our managers are doing a bit of a rotation, and this will be happening for the next few months. Our customer experiences managers are doing a rotation at each of those locations to get a better idea of really what we do as a system. And I think that that will be a great experience for them. And it's also to prepare us for the upcoming retirement of our very own Paul Chapin, who will be retiring this summer. And as far as the city of Spokane goes, we do have a new council liaison, that's Councilmember Klitsky, who could not join us tonight. But we are looking forward to working with them in the coming year. And a heads up, this also has to do with the city of Spokane. You might recall a few months ago, I mentioned that we had applied for a grant, a resiliency grant with Gonzaga and the city of Spokane that will allow us to install expanded solar panels at the Central Library, as well as incorporate those into the roof at the Liberty Park Library, as well as backup generators at those locations, so we can serve as a space and place to the communities in crisis. That grant will need to come to the board for full acceptance, and Nicole will be bringing that to the board next month. But we're working with both Gonzaga and the city of Spokane on the implementation. Any questions?
Well, go ahead, please.
Specifically on that grant to Gonzaga, have the funds actually been dispersed from the government to Gonzaga at this time?
You know, I don't know if they actually have them in hand. And that's a great question, considering.
Those funds have not yet been dispersed to Gonzaga.
Nicole Chang.
Okay. It would be helpful to keep an eye on that.
Yes. We're all sort of on edge to see how things will play out.
Thank you.
Is Placer a library only, or is this just another vendor that will?
It's a vendor service product that we pay for. It is, public can use it, they just need to work with Mark Pond in order to access it, because it's a one license that we have.
And it's not primarily a library product, businesses regularly pay for it as well.
Similar to Bluebird.
Yeah.
The way that works.
And I have a cabinet interest in utilizing some of it for other city departments as well. So I'm sure they'll be contacting because the information you can get from this this service is really powerful.
Thank you.
Is there any notable legislation that you guys are tracking at this point in time?
At this point, no. Nothing that's high priority specifically for public libraries. There are for school libraries and how they're funded, specifically their library collections. But nothing specific that's really heavy public libraries. I expect some bills to resurface from last year. One being a $2, basically a tax for devices that are purchased throughout the state. So iPads, computers, things like that, that would be utilized for digital education around digital access and things like that. It died last year, but I expect it to resurface as well. And we always get things with intellectual freedom, inappropriate viewing legislation, folks trying to get libraries to basically be a nanny state. And our policy here is that we don't act in absence of parents. So I can't imagine the headache of doing that. I've got my own 4 kids.
Any other questions, Brian? All right, thank you. And since Councilmember Klitsky is not with us this evening, we jump ahead to Amanda.
Okay, great. So today I'm going to highlight our 2024 achievements in the marketing department for you, and that report is in your packet. But first I wanted to address a couple of social media topics that have been in the news lately that may or may not impact us. So it's been a tumultuous couple of weeks in the social media world with Meta and TikTok. And so first, Meta announced that they're ending fact checking and content moderation, and that of course raises a lot of concerns for libraries who are committed to making safe and accurate spaces online and in person. But I wanted to just reassure you now that we're not making any sudden moves about our accounts in any way. This is similar to how we've handled Twitter and X. It's just kind of letting that process unfold and kind of, if it means we draw back at some time, we can do that, but right now we're not making any sudden moves around that. And second was, of course, the rigmarole around TikTok. And I wanted to reassure you that all of our content on TikTok is backed up per our social media or our public records requests requirements. So that all gets backed up automatically. And then all of those videos are also on our Instagram. So we won't lose access to anything depending on how that unfolds. I wanted to note that with you before I dive into the rest of the report here. So, but I guess bottom line is we can't do a lot about it, so we're just watching it all happen. So now onto our 2024 marketing year in review. So I have a very detailed report in your packet for you, but I wanted to highlight a few things. We completed 384 projects in 2024, and that was a 164% increase over the previous year. In 2024, we sent 10 million emails that drove consistent and trackable results. You can see a nice little spike on our Google Analytics every time we send one out, and that drives traffic to our website and our events. And we know anecdotally that emails are the best way for us to share information about our services and our events, which also reassures me about all of the social media problems. Email we have control over, and it does a better job anyways. The second most effective way that we reach our community we found is through local media. So being covered in the local paper and on TV, and we really adjusted our PR strategy in the past year to make that happen more, and it worked. We were actually featured over 100 times in local media, which is a 150% increase over the previous years. So our other high year of media coverage was in 2019 when we had Drag Queen Story Hour. So this was much more deliberate and very effective in getting the word out about our programs and services. So, and it was our control. We worked hard to make that happen versus people coming to us because we had like a hot button issue happening. We saw a consistent year growth on our social media this year, consistent to last year, year over year. We saw 13% increase in followers. Most of those were on Instagram. And we presented at several conferences, both nationwide conferences and state conferences at WLA, LMCC, and ALA. And we moderated the Library Journal Conference. So it was really cool to look through and see the national attention or spotlight that we got for the library this year. And finally, on that note, we won 3 national awards in our department in 2024, including the John Cotton Dana, which is the top award that you can win as a library marketer.
Way to bury the lead.
Yeah. Wanted to keep it humble. And that it concludes my report. Let me know if you have any questions.
I'm just curious as to what new efforts did you do this year to get more local media coverage?
We sent more press releases, and we kind of altered how we also sent. We made them more personal. So the traditional press release of the formatted press release, we still did that, but we sent personal notes to media as follow-up. So we tried multiple times. We would just send out a press release and let it simmer. We would send it out, and then we would follow up with a personal note, and that led to more engagement with our press releases.
Have you all been able to look at any correlation when you're doing some sort of media push for a specific program to see if there's a correlation behind like the value score of that program because you did more media coverage?
Definitely something we want to figure out how to quantify.
Yeah.
We kind of know it anecdotally when there's press coverage, more people come to the event. But we want to try and work together to try and find a better way to calculate that, because there's other places that we don't track, like the mayor's newsletter or mentions in kind of disparate other places that we haven't really found a way to quantify, because I think it will just take some manual work to do that at this point.
Oh yeah, because is that even included in your outreach that you are mentioned in her weekly?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of other little places that we
Yeah.
don't track formally, that we're just kind of like, oh, that's nice to know it was there or here and we saw it here. So we could figure out a way to track that a little bit better.
But impressive that all of these don't even account for that.
In the branding, photography, and design section, completed 384 projects in 2024.
Yes.
A 164% increase over 2023. How's that happen?
We are very efficient. We also got better at tracking our projects, to be honest. So we're making sure that every single project that we do is tracked in detail. So there's a little bit of a delta there because of better accuracy in tracking, but also we do a lot of work on it.
Nice. Anyone else?
How do you measure the impact of your internal communication as well?
That's a good question. Well, so we do track open rates on our internal communication, and again, that is a little bit anecdotal, checking with people, and if they haven't heard about things, it's not working.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say that our staff is vocal in letting us know if internal communication is not working. So it's more of an anecdotal than a quantifiable thing, but we know when it's not working.
Yeah.
I guess when we hear nothing, we know it's going on.
Yeah.
And there's weekly news that goes out internally.
Yeah.
By different areas, admin, programming,
Oh, okay.
operations.
Okay.
So staff know to expect it because it's themed every week.
Yeah.
And their staff engagement survey tracks that and shows consistently that the communications from the communications department are often received and highly valued.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you. Jason?
All right, I'm just gonna talk about December. I'll have the full year stuff for you at the next meeting. But December is always a slow month for programming. We don't program as much because the last half of the month is taken up, but we still had 283 things in December, which is, I think, our lowest total of programs this year. And then 3,410 people came to events, which is right on track with every other month. So youth this month, the youth programs made up over 75% of our attendance, which isn't typical. And I don't have any answer for why, but they had more people come to things this month than adult. Usually it's right at about 50-50. Yeah, so story times continue to be very highly attended. 1,400 people came to story times in December. The highest impact score youth program was a very Nordic holiday storytime and crafts. The highest attended adult program was a very Nordic holiday craft making. So people were very Nordic this holiday season. In fact, we had 3 programs with that title, a little series, and over 450 people came to those programs. Sharma Shields had a program called From the Vault, an archival poetry project where we had local poets explore items that are in the Inland Northwest Special Collections vault and then create poetry based on those items. It's a really cool project. You can see that up on the 3rd floor in the displays. Also, they had a reading that got attention in the media and brought in 56 people, which for a poetry event is like 1 million people. So it's really good. Yeah, so I plan to have everything compiled for the year for you next time. I already know that we've exceeded last year's attendance by quite a bit. And the impact score stuff, I'm gonna get kind of a narrative of that. We changed the way we scored about in April, so I can't give an exact, this is how it increased, but I can talk about from those changes moving forward, how it's impacted our programming and community. Oh, and we partnered with Aunties, however you pronounce that, to have Jan Brett, who is a pretty popular children's author, come to the Central Library, and Denise and her team put that together, had 313 folks show up to that, and there's a picture of her, Jan Brett.
We call her legendary.
Legendary?
Yes,
For sure.
note that.
Yeah.
Famous and legendary.
Any questions?
I have to ask,
Mhm.
very Nordic holiday. What does that entail?
It's a good question. It's the person who they partnered with was from like the Sons of Norway or Daughters of Norway or one of those groups. So it was just kind of about traditions of that area. So the way they celebrate the holidays, different.
They had like art. I went to the event and the like straw craft making is like a big part of like Nordic decorations and Christmas time. So we made like these little straw things with ribbon. It sounds really weird, really much less exciting than it was. And then they had, you could make little gnomes, and they had a story time and like a little cooking demonstration of, gosh, I didn't stay for that part, but I think it was lefse. So just a variety of different like Nordic themed traditions.
And there was a whole write-up of it within Inland.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't expect it to perform as well as it did.
Yeah.
Surprised.
I feel like it was promoted in a lot of different ways.
And there's a big following of that Higa lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
The Nordic traditions.
Yeah.
right now, too.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have more youth attend when there are breaks, if that's part of your driving number. It's like
Maybe.
holiday breaks, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't program a lot during
Yeah.
like certain breaks either, because we give the story times of story time people a break in the library. But yeah, I mean, this was kind of interesting thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Under new business, Karis, you're up.
All right. Cue me up, please.
Yeah. Do you want to just say slide?
Yes, I'll do something like
Okay.
that.
Oh, wait, here, sorry. I have to share my screen. Sorry. Can't forget the online people. No, I am sharing my screen. Am I? Yeah. Sammy, will you, or Nicole, will you speak up if you cannot see these PowerPoint slides?
Cannot see them.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
What about now?
No.
Okay. Excellent. What about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Nice work.
Thank you.
All right. So tonight I'm going to be talking about a proposal for adjusting our library hours to better meet the needs of our community. This proposal is based on the last 2 years of library data, and it aims to create a schedule that is consistent with actual usage patterns, that simplifies our operations and improves resource efficiency. So slide, please.
Got it.
The first thing that I wanted to do was just show you side by side what the current schedule and the proposed schedules look like, and they're gone now.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the code of conduct was first in the agenda, but we're starting with 11B.
Oh, did I go backwards? Sorry.
That's okay. I just had to clarify for the online people.
Okay, so this is our current hours and our proposed hours just side by side so you can see what we're trying to do. So our current hours, 9 to 7, Monday through Thursday, 10 to 5, Friday, Saturday, 12 to 4 on Sunday. Proposed hours are 9 to 6, Monday through Saturday, 12 to 4 on Sunday. Next slide, please. Our current operating hours were approved by the board in August 2021, and they were based on our best guesses for how the public was going to be using our new buildings. Those hours included some, at the time, experimental self-service hours at the beginning and the ends of the day that have been somewhat difficult for customers to understand, and because of that lack of understanding, a little bit difficult for our staff to implement. The intention was always to reevaluate these hours based on actual usage once we had that. And that's what this proposal does. I want to note too that this proposal was originally put forward by Jordan Hilker, our CXM at Shadle, in the spring of 24. And so what I want to do here is just run you through the different analyses that we looked at to make sure that we were doing the things that we were intending to do. So we're looking at gate counts, number of people through the door, circulation, what materials are checking out and in what volumes, computer usage, like Andrew mentioned earlier, some Placer AI demographic data, and what our programming data look like. And I wanted to put this right up front so that you could really put into context the difference in numbers of people that we're seeing. So the big change here is a reallocation of the 6 to 7 evening hour to Fridays and Saturdays in the morning and at the end of the day. And what we see is that Monday through Thursday, that 6 to 7 hour, we see an average of about 25.9 people. I don't know who that 0.9 is, but they're probably messy. The 25 people in the evening versus 57 in the morning. And I also want to point out to you that the 9 to 10 hour is not our busiest hour. Typically, we see our business spike somewhere around midday and between 10 and 2, depending on the day. But I wanted to show you where we were proposing moving these hours around so you can get an idea of what the switch actually means.
And this is across all 7 branches?
All 7 branches and it's all of 2024.
Okay.
Next slide, please. All right. So what you see here are annual gate counts, and what I want you to pay attention to is the green represent higher gate counts and the red represents lower. So the percentages that you see here, I can provide you with the spreadsheets that I used to come up with them, but basically they're comparing the morning and evening hours of the day to our steadiest hours of the day. So each one is relative to the day that's being measured. But what I want you to see is that we're busy in the morning and much less so in the evening. We see a pretty dramatic drop at that last hour of the day. Next slide, please. And here I just wanted to show you that across all 6 of our traditional library branches, this pattern holds true. So there aren't any outliers where we get a strong evening presence compared to morning. It's just across the board. Evenings don't do as well. And here we have, I wanted to give you an idea of just how circulation differs a little bit. So I picked out 2 different data points. These are adult DVDs, which are in the orange, and children's easy fiction in the blue, so that you could see how the 5 to 6 hour differs from the 6 to 7 hour in terms of usage. What we see across the board, as we saw in the previous charts, is kind of this sunsetting effect. As we get towards the end of the day, fewer people come in and fewer families come in. So the 5 to 6 hour, you can see that children's books are pretty much doing comparable business with adult DVDs. But by the 6 to 7 hour, you see that shifts. And that's because we tend to see fewer kids in that hour, fewer families, more single adults, often living by themselves, who are checking out adult materials. And recall that that's representative of those average 25 people who are here in the branch during that hour. Next slide, please. And just to give you a little bit more detail on that, the 5 to 6 hour, you can see you've got a lot of children's materials. This was just one day that I picked out kind of at random. And you see a lot of children's materials in the 5 to 6, but when you go over to the 6 to 7, it's pretty well dominated with adult materials being the primary things that are being checked out. And I also want you to look at the number of checkouts we're talking about, which is also pretty low. Next slide, please. And this is just to highlight 3.22% of our circulation is what happens in that 6 to 7 hours. So again, showing this is a really small cross-section of our business compared to the rest. And you can see on here, most of the other hours do fairly comparable, but what we see is that towards the end of the day, we just get less engagement, less usage. Next slide, please. We looked at computer use, and what we see here, I think this is one of the really important points, because this is one of the places where you see that we're going to have to make some kind of tough decisions. We do have computer users in the 6 to 7 hour. It ends up being 13% of our unique computer users out of the 10,000 that we serve every year logged in during that hour. So what we see is that hour is actually busier than the morning. And we see that it's a different type of user who is going there. Typically, it's a lower income user that is coming into the library after work, or they are people in single adult households, is what we're finding a lot of. Next slide, please. So the Placer AI, it's a creepy thing. And it tracks based on cell phone data, not some other stuff that we see. So it's able to tell us where you were before you came to the library and where you went after. Your basic demographic data, your age, whether you got kids at home, how many fillings you have, whatever you might want. So what was really relevant here for us is I wanted to know who's using the library in the evening, who's using the library in the morning, and where are they coming from going there. Because we maintain these kind of underperforming evening hours for working adults. That's kind of the idea. And what we see is that there's a lot that the morning users have in common with those evening users. They tend to be older in households without children, so that suggests that there's some crossover between those populations, where you've got people who are coming before work to go to the library and people who are going after work. On the weekend and during that 5 to 6 hour, we see that our average age in our branches skews younger, and we see more people who are likely to live in households with children present. Next slide, please. So who are we really impacting by eliminating this 6 to 7 hour Monday through Thursday? Typically, we're talking about adults. There's about 5 of those 25 people at any given time may be in a professional or managerial classification. Those are the ones that are likely coming after work. The other 75% of the people are at the library for some other reason. They came from somewhere else, not from their place of employment. We see about 6.6% of our total computer sessions, and like I said, about 13% of our unique users are active during that time. Next slide, please. There are some operational efficiencies that come with this schedule. Our Monday through Thursday schedule makes for a 10-hour day. Our 10 to 5 on Friday and Saturday makes for a 7-hour day. And then on Sunday, we have a 4-hour day. Now, for people who are dividing their time, as our employees often do, between 8-hour days and 4-hour days to meet with their normal shifts, that makes for some wonkiness. So we end up doing a bunch of overtime, and also in our union contract, there is a stipulation that any hour after 4 o'clock is considered to be a swing shift. So by eliminating this hour in the evening, we cut back on the swing shift differential, and we will see how much overtime we can curtail in that process as well. As you know, we experienced a budget cut from the city, and while this is not a direct response to that, this certainly does help in that way. Next slide, please. And then there's the question of programming and self-service or after-hours access. So like I said, self-service is not working quite in the way that we had intended, so we're looking to go kind of a different route with it. All of the hours that I've been proposing for this new schedule would be fully staffed hours, and we would be approaching self-service in a different way. One, by first expanding access to meeting rooms after hours at locations, so that people could get used to using the library without staff in the building, and then eventually working on more of an allow list type system. In all of our buildings, we spent a lot of money creating self-access technology that's on our entries, and we would like to put that to use. There are a lot of philosophical and logistical implications for decisions made in that area, so we don't want to be too quick about it. But we do intend to expand the hours into self-service beyond the hours proposed in the future. For programming, one of the concerns that we had and that we had seen from staff was that if we eliminated that evening hour, that it would cut into adult programming. And what we found is that we don't get a lot of adults who just kind of randomly stumble into programs that are happening because they're at the library. Usually it's very intentional, and when people come to one of our programs, they meant to be there. All of our librarians are empowered to have the buildings open whenever they want to. So if they want to do a program at 8 p.m., they could do that. If they want to do one at 2 a.m., theoretically we could do that. I don't know why we would want to, but we could. Next slide, please. So just to summarize everything that I've said so far, our proposed schedule, Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6, Sunday, 12 to 4. It reallocates these underutilized hours, simplifies the hours, and makes them easier for customers to remember. One of our big complaints from staff is on Friday and Saturday mornings when people expect the library to be open like it was on Thursday, but it's not. It's better aligns with actual usage patterns. It saves money and resources. It simplifies scheduling for staff and managers. And it really creates this opportunity to kind of push our self-service forward in a new and more interesting direction. Next slide, please. If the board were to vote to implement this, we would be looking at the new hours going to effect on June 1st. After the February board meeting, we would make our internal announcement to staff, followed by public announcements and outreach, and then about a month of time where we would be advertising in branch before we officially changed the signs on the door and switched over. Next slide, please. So no action requested tonight. We just wanted to give you the information so that you could have it and you could mull it over, because like I was explaining, there are some people who will be impacted by this change, and I think it's worth spending some time thinking about. I want to pull together the data, the raw data that I use to do this analysis so that you can look over that as you want to. And with the hope that in February we'll be ready for a vote. Are there any questions?
If we decide to go this way and we have all of this, and I know you see the vote in February, when we have our retreat, will we be able to take a little bit more of a deeper dive into this? Because there are some things there that I wouldn't mind having a little bit more information.
I mean, I think we could certainly discuss some of these things at the retreat. There are things that will naturally dovetail into some of the topics that have been already identified for conversation there. There aren't any that are specifically related to this, but I think that there will be opportunity to discuss some of them.
Thank you.
May I ask several questions? One, I wasn't clear what the proposed self-service hours will be.
There are none. There are no current proposed self-service hours. All of the hours proposed are full service, and we're kicking the can down the road a little bit with self-service to figure out a better way to do it.
Oh, okay, thank you. The second question I had was, were you able to look at whether the hours of usage shift at all seasonally? Like if it's lighter later, are more people apt to go later to the library?
I did not look specifically at the hours. We know that we have seasonal changes, that we see spikes in the summer and spikes in the winter when it's either hottest or coldest. But I did not do any look at how those correlate with the actual usage by hour, but we certainly could. And that could be something that I could put into the data that you guys get.
Thank you. I have one last question. The proposed savings that you put up between 54,000 and 202,000, that's a pretty big range. I'm just wondering why such a wide range, or is it?
Well, I've got a friend on the line.
Yes, thank you. So that range, it's essentially a minimum and a maximum amount of savings because of the multiple factors. For example, the reduction with the self-service hours and the overtime, and then the effect on the swing shift, as well as how we navigate what those schedule changes might look like. So what the level of staffing we have in that final hour. So there's a lot of variables, which is why there's that large gap there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I should note too that enhanced after hours sort of self-service access that is being implemented right now by Timberland Regional Library. We've been in discussion with them actually for the past few years about how they're moving forward and how we're looking forward.
How long did it take them to move into this direction?
They've been piloting it for the past couple years at various locations. This is, we're starting to see more and more of this technology implemented throughout the country.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Karis, thank you.
All right.
Thanks for the very thorough
Yeah, I
analysis of that too.
Now we can go back in time to my other.
Good.
All right, so my other item concerns the library customer code of conduct. We like to update ongoing safety issues throughout that we're experiencing throughout the library. And unfortunately, we've had a couple that warrant some changes. So the first thing that you'll see in here is a change to our, well, it's a complete addition. We've been having some issues with mostly downtown where we have some young hooligans who like to come into the library, faces all covered like ninjas so that we can't identify who they are. They kind of wreak havoc and then they leave. So we worked with legal to get to the point where we can include in our code of conduct a reasonable request that if you're coming into the library with face coverings, that you show our security staff so that they can identify you in the event that you are breaking some rule or under suspicion of having broken a rule. There were lots of conversations that went into there to identify people who were wearing face coverings for medical or religious reasons. And I want to point out that those are exempt from this policy. And in the event that we have anybody in those categories who also needs to have this applied to them, it would be done in a private space or with just off of the public floor. But it's not a blanket policy, but just it's an approach to ensure safety while protecting individual rights. So that's the first item. Does anybody have any questions about that one?
What does that look like enforcing that? I liked that. Thank you for the clarification that it would be something that security would be making the request. So I would hate for staff to be, like, that just seems like making a situation more stressful for staff. Security is not staff, but.
Yes. This is intended to give securities more tools in their toolbox to be able to deal with ongoing problems.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens in this case typically is you would have somebody come through the door who is fully covered, and they would be engaging in some rambunctious sort of behavior. They would be running through the library, they would be using loud voices, one of the things that would tip off security to them in the first place.
Yeah.
And then security would approach them and ask them to pull their mask down so that they could be identified. Also, if they fit the description of anybody who's been trespassed, that would be another instance, because we have some of them who like to cover up to avoid having their trespasses enforced. And that would be our primary way that would happen. So usually
behavior than the request.
Yes,
okay.
it's behavior based. If you come in and you're wearing a mask, the odds are very slim that you're going to be bothered by staff at all. It's very clearly targeting this specific group of people who like to cover up.
Because in the situations now, when that happens and security is confronting that individual or multiple individuals, there's no recourse. That person leaves or.
Exactly. They leave. We don't know who they were. And there's no rule compelling them to show their face.
Right.
So right now they would say, I don't have to show you anything that I don't want to, and they would leave and we would be none the wiser.
Yeah.
Now at least, they are compelled to do it. They would be compelled to do it by the rule. And if they refuse to comply with a reasonable staff request, then we could take action against them in that way too.
What does taking action mean?
Usually trespassing them
Okay.
for some period of time, depending on the infraction.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions about that one? All right. The second one concerns open flames, inflatables, and wheeled devices. We have become birthday party central, which we absolutely love, but with birthday parties come some complications. So we wanted to put this rule in place so that we could let people know, no birthday candles in our program rooms for fear of fire or smoke causing then the sprinklers to go off and water damage of our materials. Large wheel devices that could potentially be damaging our floors or our walls when they're banged into them, and bouncy houses, all of which have either been asked about or have happened.
So inflatables doesn't mean like helium balloons, it means.
Bouncy house.
Bouncy house.
What kind of wheeled devices?
So that one actually covers a lot of different things. So we see a lot of our visitors to the Central Library will attempt to bring in shopping carts. There's also wagons. So there's some things that would be reasonably expected to damage our property either through wear or whatever. It does not apply to like strollers or wheelchairs or wagons that are being used for the transportation of children. It's more big wheel devices that obstruct walkways and potentially damage the facilities.
And how would this be implemented? Like if somebody sees a birthday cake on the candles lit,
Kara's closing out.
Blow them all out. I found myself on Amazon looking for LED blowout sensitive candles, which used to exist, but they're all sold out.
There's a switch. I had my daughter's birthday at the library. And then it was communicated so respectfully, like this is a policy, no open flames, very reasonable. So we did an LED and then I just held it like she blew and I turned the pool on. Not a big deal. Her birthday was ruined. She didn't get any of her 5-year-old wishes. Really sad.
So that's, yes, very, very similar. So if we would warn people ahead of time specifically for the meeting rooms if we know that they're going to do a birthday party. If our staff sees them setting up for a birthday party, a manager would go let them, just remind them, no open flames. And if we saw someone doing it, we would go in there and tell them that's not allowed.
You don't have permits for that.
Yeah, permits or controlled burns.
No, for birthday parties and little tiny candles.
No, we do not require permits as well. So we are asking for the board to approve those changes to the code of conduct.
Both seem very reasonable, so I move to approve the changes to the code of conduct as presented.
My second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion's carried.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other additional items or changes to the agenda? Public comment?
None?
All right. Next regular meeting, February 18th at the Central Library. Do we have an executive session today? Then we are adjourned.
Bye, Sam and Nicole.
Bye, Sam.